Welcome to the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast from Never Too Late Cafe. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Each week, we sit down for a chat with someone just like you, someone who had an idea, a passion, a dream, or sometimes just a thought, and planted that seed, watched it grow into something they wanted to share with the world. If you have an idea for a topic or someone that would be a guest for the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, where you can join our Never Too Late Cafe Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. Hi, everyone. This is Laura Womack of Never Too Late Cafe with the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast. And I have a very special guest with me today, Josiah Whitley. So, hi, welcome.
Hi there.
Well, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what form of art you do.
Well, like you said, my name is Josiah Whitley. I'm technically from Wheelersburg, Ohio, but born in Portsmouth and raised in Wheelersburg, just about 8 miles away. A little population. It's about 6,000 people that live in the burg, and I am a singer-songwriter.
Oh, wonderful! So we tell stories here, and so how long have you been interested in songwriting, and how did you get into it?
Well, what got me into writing songs was when I picked up the guitar when I was 12. I started out on the mandolin when I was 6. I wasted the first 6 years of my life, but I picked up the mandolin at that age because that was the earliest time anyone had ever actually asked, with sincerity, if I wanted to play music. The answer was always yes, but it was the first time an adult had ever asked. And as a kid, the songwriting bug did not bite me at all. But when I picked up the guitar, and I started learning some things from my grandpa and my dad, what started it was my dad he was an accomplished guitar player, and he would play something just randomly. And I'm like, man, what the heck is that? And he goes, oh, I don't know. I just made it up. And it blew my mind because my grandpa never did that on the mandolin. Never. Like he was always working on a song from a book or learning a song from a cassette or a record. So he never had really much creative juices running through him, I guess. But my dad did, but he only wrote a couple of tunes. And that's what started it as a 12-year-old, was learning, well, I want to do that too. So what I started doing was I realized at a very young age, when I was just learning the guitar, I learned that if I felt a certain way inside, I could play something on the guitar that mirrored that feeling, and I felt so good. And I learned as a kid that if I felt sad, if I played something sad, then I would get it out. And if I felt really happy, like I could play something that sounded happy. So I realized at a very early age I had that ability that I could connect music with my emotions. And then it went from there to doing words and telling stories with my songs and just growing as a writer.
Wow. So you have actually done some group collaborations with a couple of people from out of the area, like out of state. You connected with some people and you did some songwriting together.
Yeah, so with songwriting, I've collaborated with my very good friend Abby Emmons, who was my first collaborator, and our collaboration is still going strong 10 years later, which is a lot of fun, and it's nice to work with somebody that you wholeheartedly trust. So we've wrote a few tunes together, but my biggest collaborator and my most successful one has been with my friend Charlie Haskins. He came up with this wicked awesome idea that I never would have thought of. And I think of myself as creative, but Charlie is a living, breathing, creative monster. I mean, he's always doing something new every day, and I'm very envious of that. But he came up to me one day and he said, hey man, he goes, I've been really thinking about this. And he said, why don't we collaborate? And he's like, but what I want to do is I want to give you one of my paintings. And then you'll take that home and you'll create a song based off of my painting. And I'll completely stay out of your way. I'm just like, here's my thing. You take it from there. And then he goes, while you're doing that, why don't you give me one of your songs and I'll take it home into my studio and then I'll listen to it and I'll create a painting based off of your song. And he goes, and then what we can do is we can put the paintings and the lyrics side by side in a book. And then that way it'll be interactive. And then inside the book itself, the CD will be in a sleeve. So it's a whole package. So you can put the CD in, you can look at the painting, you can interact with it, by reading the lyrics, looking at the painting. And then you can enjoy the book by itself or the CD by itself. And I said, that is an awesome idea. So we did that. It was called Moon Songs. It came out on Record Store Day in November of 2018, I believe.
Well, no, I know Charlie, and yes, he is very talented. I've hired him for some work before, and I know he's illustrated books and
all kinds of stuff. He deserves so much more accolades.
Yeah. So, and you're really, really good at the guitar. I mean, there are videos of you, and it's like, take it away. So how did you get developed to that extent? That's amazing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That means so much to me. Well, it's like anything else. It's like any other skill. I heard this as a kid, that there is the rule of the 10,000 hours. Have you ever heard of that? The 10,000 hour rule?
No.
So that's a principle that states it takes 10,000 hours to master anything, regardless of what it is. So, somebody as blue collar as a welder or like a carpenter to somebody like a painter or an illustrator or a poet, 10,000 hours, they say it takes to master. And as a kid, I give my grandpa all this credit. He's no longer with us, but when I was a little boy on the mandolin, my grandpa treated me, he was retired at that point, and he treated me like his retirement hobby. So
his job.
Yeah. So we would play the mandolin literally for hours every day as a little kid. And that was a big workload as a kid. And I remember really not enjoying it all that much because my grandparents babysat us during the school year and in the summer. And during the school year, we would literally, as soon as I got off the bus, got something to eat, I was in the music room until my dad came and picked me up. So it would be like 3 hours of like nonstop working and listening. And when I got the guitar, I absolutely fell head over heels, madly in love with the guitar. And I learned how to practice. I learned how to take those hours and make them useful and make them not boring. So I was playing the guitar when I was 12, like 4 hours a day on average. And then in the weekends when I didn't have school, and I played soccer too, and I was a straight A student. So, but during the weekends, it would be like 6 or 8 hours. I just played non-stop. And that will get you good at anything if you put that kind of dedication and effort into it.
That's a lot of time.
It is.
And the other things that you did too. I don't see how you fit it all in.
Well, what's nice is when you get good enough at the guitar or like anything, you kind of go on autopilot. So you really don't have to think about it too much. It's just like a skill it's just in your subconscious. So you can focus on other stuff.
And you teach it now.
I do. I've been giving guitar lessons to kids and adults of all ages and experience levels since June of 2009. So I've been teaching for quite a while.
That is. So you have some records out, correct?
Mm-hmm. I do.
And you play out like you
150 to 175 gigs a year, 1,000 miles a week.
1,000 miles a week. That is a lot.
Yeah.
So this podcast is called Bloom Where You're Planted. Mm-hmm. And that is different for everybody. So what does that mean to you?
I thought long and hard about that question when you brought that up to me yesterday. I think it depends. Like you said, it's different for everybody. To me, it's a two answer or a 2-part answer, I should say. My bad. A 2-part answer. In my circumstance, it is, and in the past, it's been, Well, bloom where you are planted. Well, plants don't get to decide where they're planted. So they bloom where they are, meaning, in my opinion, they do the best they can. They shine where they are assigned, and they do the best they can and try to put the best on, you know. But also, I thought about it and I thought, well, dandelions kind of get to choose. They might get to move their stem one way and let the breeze catch them, and then they go somewhere else. So I guess if you don't like where you're planted, hopefully you're a dandelion and you can catch the wind and go somewhere more favorable and bloom there.
Not long ago, I posted something about if a weed, I don't know how I said it. It was something about if is a weed still a flower, if it as a bloom or something, because they do,
Of
a
course
lot of
they
people
do.
don't. So that is very interesting. I like that. And so you go what region around Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia?
Yeah, the tri-state, Indiana. I will go all over the continental U.S. if I could afford it, and if I had the fan base to where I could justify that, I would never be home. I would be literally burning up the road hundreds of miles a day. I absolutely love being on the road. I love it, and I love everything about it. The furthest I've been,
everything, the drive and everything.
The driving's my favorite part.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not making this up either. I just got married, so I got married 3 months ago. Thank you.
Oh, it's new.
And yeah, she still has that new wife smell. But when before I was married and I was living on my own, and I'd done this ever since I was a teenager. If I had nothing to do, I was putting gas in my car and just driving and get lost. And I still love to do that. And whenever I have the free time and the free money, that's what I would do. And I would drive around the county and the surrounding counties and come home and then be like, man, I got to drive to Cleveland tomorrow. I better get some sleep and not think anything about it. I mean, the farthest I've been by car for a gig is Fargo, North Dakota. And I drove it all in one day. It took 18 and a half hours to get from Dayton, Ohio to Fargo. So.
Wow. I have a friend that just went from Stout to North Dakota because that's where she's from, but they didn't do it all at one shot.
Yeah, I went two ways as well. That's an interesting story. I was playing at North Dakota State University, and I'm 31 now. I'm still a pretty young guy. Playing at colleges, if you're going to be in your 30s, you better be pretty well established. If you're in your 20s, you can get away with it because you're still almost college age. But colleges will pay you a really nice chunk of change for practically hardly any services. So at Fargo, I got in touch with them, and they were like, we would love to have you. And they said, we'll get you a rental car, we'll get you a hotel, and we'll promote you to death. And they did. I still have it. It's not here in this room, but they made a movie poster sized poster, 2 feet by 3 feet of me with my name and my face on it. And they were like, we'll pay you X amount of money for 90 minutes of music. And it was more money than I made in a month at my day job working at a school. And I said, I'll take that. So, I drove all the way out there, and it was worth it. And I'd never been out west, but I was getting the car, and a man in the waiting room overheard why I needed the car. And he said, if you're willing to take this from a stranger, he goes, I lived in North Dakota for 30 years. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, because I moved here because my family's here and we visited all the time. Because if you want to see a lot of the country, he said, go through Minnesota and Wisconsin the first time. And when you come back, go through South Dakota and Nebraska and Iowa, and then over through Illinois and Indiana. So that's what I did. I did a big teardrop looking thing to see all those states. I couldn't help it.
My friends went through Minnesota because they have a camper and they camped on the way. So Minnesota was one stop. So that's interesting because it's in process right now. So how did you get North Dakota? I mean, you just thought one day, I'm going to call North Dakota University.
No, that's very interesting that you say that. What I realized very early on, because I was always in bands from the time I was in my first band. I was 13, and I played with my dad and my grandpa in the bluegrass group, and we never did play out. We might have did like 2 shows in our whole time. And I played in various rock bands, and we played some. And I realized that I wasn't making a living doing this, and I wanted to make a living. And I said, well, I'll make more money if I do this on my own. And when it came time to booking, I'm like, man, there's a lot of places, but I don't know where to look. So I started looking wherever I could, finding every resource imaginable. And one of the things I stumbled upon was a college database spreadsheet that somebody had made and they kept updated. And that was, I had to pay for it. I think it was like $200 or something. It was kind of expensive for all that information, but it had over 750 colleges. So it was every college in the US that offered live entertainment, and it had all their information. All I had to do was just get on the horn. So I took that and put it into my computer and started emailing and cold calling like crazy. I used to work at AT&T, and I had the worst job at AT&T. I was a door-to-door salesman, and it sucked. I only worked there for like 3 weeks. I lived in Nashville for a brief period and did that. And what they taught me was they taught me about sales. They taught me about how to work a database and everything. So I took what I learned from working at AT&T as a salesman and thought, okay, well, my product is me. I'm a musician. I want to play, and you need me. So I started doing that. And the college thing was difficult because you normally need a college agent, and that's expensive. And I didn't have the money. So the fact I even got a college gig was already very, very rare. And then the fact I got one so far away that paid so well was literally, that's like hitting the Powerball. That's so hard to do without any kind of professional support. So no, they were the only ones that called. I called out to as far as LA and Seattle and New York City, and I did a few gigs around. Like Raritan, not Raritan, but New Brunswick, New Jersey. I played at Rutgers there. I played in Syracuse, New York, the University of Mississippi. Yeah, I've been everywhere, and it's because of that. I would have done a lot more if I would have had the resources, but I just couldn't.
So when did you start recording? How did that come about?
Almost as soon as I made the decision I wanted to play music full time as a solo artist. Like I said, I played in other groups, but we weren't making anything. And I said, well, I literally want music to only pay my bills. So the first thing is when you want to go play somewhere, well, the very first question that a venue is going to ask is, you got any music? I got to hear you.
Right.
So
a
what
demo
do you
at least.
Yeah. So how that happened was January 2015. I was 24 years old, and I made a New Year's resolution to myself. I said, I'm going to push as hard as I can to make this happen. And I'm going to record my music. I'm going to write my music. I'm going to try to get published. I'll start a publishing company so I can get my music on Spotify and iTunes and wherever. And I'm going to just push and push and push as hard as I can until I finally realize I can't do it for a living. So that was in January. And then by February, I had my first EP recorded, and I had all the songs written. It's very rough. The quality is frankly, it's piss poor, but the songwriting was there from the beginning, and that helped. And as I got more comfortable, because I never sang before either before that. So once I got more comfortable singing, once I got more comfortable being alone on stage and being vulnerable to share people something I had created with the intention, with the knowledge that people might really hate it, all that stuff, or they might really love it. It started back then in January 2015, and it hasn't stopped.
So what gives you inspiration for your writing?
Songs literally come from anywhere and from nowhere. And I love to give this analogy when people ask that. So to me, songwriting is a cake that's made out of 3 ingredients. You got the story, or just the topic of the song. You got the lyrics that tell the story, and then you got the music. And it's kind of like making a bowl of cereal. A cereal is 2 ingredients, milk and cereal, sometimes sugar, right? There is some weirdo out there that puts milk in the bowl before they put the cereal. But at the end of the day, it's still a bowl of cereal and it's going to be good. So it doesn't matter what's it doesn't matter what comes first. It doesn't matter if the music comes first or you hear a good story. A good story is always going to keep being told because it's a good story. So if you find a good story, you're like, oh, I'll take that one. Then you start writing about it. Or maybe you're doing the dishes and you got a really good line, or you heard someone say something in the bar and you're like, ooh, that's a good line right there. Then you write it down and you start with that. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you got these 3 ingredients and you stick them in the oven, you put some heat on it, meaning you try it. You try to fuse these things together by playing your song. And then when it's done, you look at it and go, boy, that's great. I think I'll share it. And if it's bad, you go, oh, that turned out awful. I'm throwing it away. And you just keep going until you get enough.
So with your driving, do you ever get, I've had jobs in the past where I did a lot of driving. Yeah. And that gives you a lot of time to think. Did you ever have any inspirations come from being on the road?
Oh my gosh, so many. Johnny Cash summed it up the best. He said, I write just as good behind a steering wheel as I do behind a guitar. And it's true because, I've written complete songs before without the guitar around, and I knew where the chords would be and what the melody is. And I've written songs in like 15 minutes just driving in the car. I'm like, man, I cannot wait to get home so I can, try this thing out and sing it into the phone. I've done that quite a few times.
That is so interesting. And I was wondering about the road because I just think it's, you don't have there's a freedom to the road.
Oh,
as long as you're not going if you're not going into a city and having to look, or road construction, all that stuff, but just endless driving I know that can be inspiring. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of our conversation with Josiah Whitley. Be sure to catch part 2 next week on the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast from Never Too Late Cafe.